if you haven't already known, we've done a lot of things that I'm not going to get into for the sake of time, but our newest one you experienced this morning, Wild Church. And so how many people enjoyed that this morning? Nice. How many people would be interested in going to another Wild Church experience? Okay, not as many people raised their hands. Edgar, you got some work to do. So we came across this. It's something I came across a handful of years ago, but didn't really ever talk about it much. And I think a few of us have had this kind of reaction of this would be really nice to do this in our presbytery. And it kind of just came to head this past spring, winter, when we shared a couple articles at one of our meetings that we had. And one of the articles that was shared was that Corey Turnpenny, a UMC minister, has a wild church north of Binghamton, and she started doing coaching for anybody who is interested. And I know her as we were in another group together, Young Clergy Women International, and so we reached out and did some brainstorming of what would this look like in a presbytery level partnership, which is much different than individual or congregational level. And so she was excited about the possibility for this, and we have been. And so with that, we applied for a grant through the grants committee, and we got it. Thank you very much. And for the past, since April, however many months that is, we've been meeting once a month to kind of figure out how to do this both at a presbytery level to show how these can be done for congregations, but also to know how to work with congregations or individuals who are interested in doing this sort of work, what resources we can provide, how can we help them plan and do some resourcing, which is great that Debbie now is our new worshiping community coordinator or director, and we would love to be able to work with you a little bit on that too, if anybody is interested in this. But to hear more about the Wild Church services that we've done, Luann's going to.
Thanks. So I'm Luann Panarati, pastor at Pleasant Plains Presbyterian Church. In her poem, Sometimes, Mary Oliver offers instructions for living a life, right? Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And that's not really a bad summary of what might happen at Wild Church, right? At our first sampler service, Jeff Geary talked about how Moses' choice to turn aside and look at the burning bush allowed an encounter with God. And then we were sent out on the grounds to turn aside, to marvel, maybe even have our own divine encounters, and then gathered back to share them with one another. Wild Church isn't just regular church brought outside. It's worship that can only happen outside, not just among the other beloved ones we find there, but in community with them. And what better way to build community than to be curious about the other, right? To ask questions about what it's like to be them. So at our second service, we each chose some natural thing and asked it questions. We queried dragonflies, milkweed plants, fresh tree stumps, even a stick etched with bark beetle tracks. One of us stood before a pond, so still on the surface and yet so rich with hidden inner life. And he found it asking him a question. Could he find that stillness and that richness and that life within himself? Afterwards, we gathered for a potluck hearty communion. Bread and juice, olives and clementines, gluten-free pizza and blueberry muffins, plus nuts and birdseed for our wild neighbors. So we all just got to savor a third delicious taste of our Wild Church sampler, and as we've mentioned, there will be a fourth unique service on October 1st with Edgar Hayes and the others at the Freedom Farm community. There is a Wild Church for every community and every setting, and we want to help you find yours, right? We want to be resources for you, resources of encouragement and help. We want to share resources with you, and we would love it if you would share your resources with us, ideas, readings, liturgical elements, music, all earth creation-focused elements, whatever. So please send those to us at HRP Green 40. That's HRP Green 40 at HRPgreen@gmail.com. Many thanks to the Grants Committee, to our coach, Corey Turnpenny, and to all who helped to plan and lead and came out for our sampler services. We hope you'll join us again, as I said, on October 1st. Elizabeth Barrett Browning wrote, "Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. So let's pay attention and be astonished and tell about it." Thank you. I'm still here from HRP Green. We have another project. We would like all of you on your church grounds to consider getting rid of some of your grass. There are 70 churches in this presbytery, and that's a lot of grass. And there are many reasons why you want to get rid of it. Gas lawn mowers cause emissions. Grass isn't good at cleaning the air, but bushes, shrubs, flowers, trees are. Native plants help. Well, native plants help feed us. Basically, pollinators ensure that the world has food to eat. So there are already a whole bunch of churches in this presbytery that have done this. And I'm going to name a few of them, but somebody asked over here, you know, what can we get a grant for? A lot of churches have gotten grants for putting gardens on their property. And a lot of those gardens, there's many food gardens, there's pollinators gardens, there's both. Many of the food gardens, most of the food grown on church property in this presbytery goes to supply the food pantries. And the pollinators just, you know, give us all the, it's going to help us continue on this planet. You don't have to start with a meadow, you don't have to start with a farm. You can start with 1 or 2 pollinator plants, 1 or 2 native plants, and then build from there. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. But a few years ago, HRP Green put together a video that you can watch on the Hudson River Presbytery website. It's a video of all the gardens in the presbytery that we know about. There may be a few, and you'll let me know if I don't know about some. But I couldn't show it here today, so I just want to tell you about a few things about. We have time for a minute? 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to go fast. Ossining has a garden by the sidewalk, and it's some vegetables, and it says if it's ripe, pick it. What a great message, and that's an easy thing to do. Dobbs Ferry and Bedford, both those churches have 2 large vegetable gardens on their property and a pollinator garden, and they're feeding people and they're protecting the environment, and they're also, both of those churches are doing community education. Courtney talked this morning about doing church school out in the garden. Mount Vernon, both of those are ground funded. Mount Vernon last year got a Challenge to Change grant. I was talking to Beverly today to start a garden behind their church. And they've got a big garden there now, and they're doing work with the school behind them and other community programs. Monroe has a well-established vegetable garden that was funded by a Presbytery Challenge to Change grant. It's been there, I think, 9 years. Cold Spring has 3 pollinator gardens funded by Challenge to Change. Rye Portchester has raised beds, which are really good for older people and physically challenged people to do. I've not seen it yet, but I understand Freedom Plains has a large pollinator garden, which would probably be a meadow. Once you get to that point, you don't have to worry about grass, you don't have to worry about watering. I'm almost there. Hopewell Church has a garden supported by a Girl Scout member. Germans has a garden. Narshan started a garden last year. Patterson basically, where's David Frost? Did he leave? Patterson basically has a farm on their church property, and he's also farming here. So you could do that, and that goes, again, it goes to the food pantries. Off-site, Yorktown has a garden of hope. Calvary Newburgh and Calvary Newburgh, and I understand Union Newburgh, are both associated with very large farms in Newburgh that feed a lot of people. Freedom Farms, where Edgar is, and Will Summers is associated with Otisville. They're feeding people. If you're interested, talk to us, and we'll be so happy to tell you how to apply for a grant and how to get information on what you'd like to do. And I just want to mention on another topic, environmental, about 12 people from this presbytery marched in the climate march. So thank you to Marjorie. Marjorie sort of led that effort, so thank you.